Tanner McKee was a big winner for the Eagles in their win over the New England Patriots in week 2 of the preseason. Who else won? Who lost? Stock up, stock down, coming your way.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Eagles fans? Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every Friday edition of the show, and we're brought to you today by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. I'm Louis DiBiase riding solo. Today you got Gino's takes last night regarding the Eagles' 1-point win over the New England Patriots in week 2 of the preseason. The Birds now 2-0. in 3 games of the preseason. One more coming up for you next week. Got stock up, stock down for you today because, of course, the score isn't really what matters. It's how players developed. Can they win positional battles, depth spots on this roster on both sides of the football? And one guy that absolutely has not only earned the right to be on this roster, but earned the right to back up Jalen Hurts is Tanner McKee. Tanner McKee yesterday, he looked like what he's always looked like in the preseason. An absolute baller. A guy that has a top-tier arm, top-tier size. He's aggressive. He has so many different types of throws that he tries that he's good at. Layer throws, back shoulder passes. He's not afraid to make any kind of completion or any kind of attempt. Deep balls. He knows when to chuck the football down. Tanner McKee is finally what the Eagles have always preached they want when they, like what they're looking for when they try to justify drafting a quarterback on day 3. And most of the time, it doesn't work. Like Clayton Thorson, or you look at when they signed Carson Strong to a pretty hefty UDFA contract last summer, or I should say that was 2 summers ago in 2022. Tanner McKee is finally that guy where it's even what they wanted with Jalen Hurts when they drafted him in 2020. It's a long-term developmental quarterback prospect that can turn into your inexpensive QB2 behind your franchise quarterback. And then eventually, maybe you can flip him for a pick if a team wants to try him out as a starter. Well, Tanner McKee has done everything, checked off every box to show you that he is that guy finally. It's finally worked. And yet, like he was, again, yesterday, he was really good. And he was really good in the preseason last year. This camp, he's been really good to the point where they're giving him second-team reps. However, it still hasn't been enough, apparently, to beat out Kenny Pickett for the backup job, even though Kenny Pickett, I think, in my opinion, has been conservative, has held onto the football too long over these 2 games in the preseason, hasn't done much of anything in training camp to really run away with the job over Tanner McKee. And yet Nick Sirianni, David Spadaro, both confirmed last night, even after the game, that Kenny Pickett is still the backup. They are very happy with all 3 guys, with Jalen Hurts, with Kenny Pickett, with Tanner McKee. And I don't understand it. Like, what's this allegiance to Pickett? Is it only to justify the trade that Howie Roseman made that I didn't like to begin with? And I hate it even more now? Why did I not like it then? Because I didn't want to move down all those spots in the 3rd round. And because I thought Tanner McKee was the player we're seeing on the field. And he can be your QB2. You didn't need to go out there and bring in a veteran, at least in my opinion. And if you wanted to, you didn't need to trade for somebody. You could have signed somebody to a lower level contract. You didn't need to trade for Kenny Pickett. And now it feels like he's only QB2 because of that. And what does he have over McKee right now? Name value and the fact that he was a 1st-round pick? And that shouldn't justify anything, considering that was one of the worst quarterback classes of all time, and he had no business being a 1st-round quarterback, and everybody knew it. So outside of name recognition and 1st-round quarterback label, what does he have over Tanner McKee right now that he has earned the right to be the backup to Jalen Hurts? Mobility? But even mobility, there was a play yesterday, Kenny Pickett, he did a pretty nice job evading pressure inside the pocket, rolls to his left, but guess what? A defensive tackle beat him to the edge. Like, so his mobility, it's not like he has, Lamar Jackson speed, or it's not like he has a Joe Milton type of frame where he's tall and mobile, and you're like, okay, like, yeah, he might not be as good of a passer as Tanner McKee, but that mobility is going to be great in case Jalen Hurts goes down. We don't need to change the offense as much as we would if Tanner McKee's the quarterback. Tanner McKee is not, or Kenny Pickett's not running the same offense as Jalen Hurts. He's not going to be able to do the same things as Jalen Hurts. So I don't like, outside of, again, justifying the trade and outside of just he's played actual football in the NFL, like as a starter, not good football, but he's played football. There's no other reason that he should be starting or should be the backup over Tanner McKee. McKee was really good again yesterday. One of the main reasons you won that football game. And I just don't know what the point, like, why are you wasting draft picks now on quarterbacks if you're never going to give them the opportunity to do what you drafted them to do, even when they've earned it on the field like Tanner McKee has? Like, then stop. If you're going to always trade for a veteran every single year, and I'm sure I've said this on the podcast before, but if you're going to trade for a veteran every single year and never be satisfied and give a young player a chance to prove he can be that guy, then stop wasting those picks. Go take a linebacker. Go take another tight end. Let's find a backup for Dallas Goedert. I don't know. It feels like a waste of a pick. McKee is a good player. Like, I think they nailed that draft pick, and they're not capitalizing on it. Like, I think Kenny Pickett, I don't even really want on this roster, to be honest with you. So stock up to Tanner McKee. I'd say stock down to Kenny Pickett. He finally tried a deep ball again yesterday down the left sidelines. John Ross beat Christian Gonzalez, and Pickett overthrew it. He underthrew a deep ball to Ross last week, and so he takes like 1 or 2 shots a game, and outside of that, it's just check down Charlie. So, yeah, it's kind of annoying. Like, it's frustrating to see this situation play out. And again, it's in a vacuum because they have Jalen Hurts, and this isn't really a big deal. But in the vacuum of McKee versus Pickett, Tanner McKee's the better player. And sometimes it bothers me when the better player doesn't get the job. Like, I understand, like, you guys know me, Quinyon Mitchell's a first-round pick. Like, Kelee Ringo's been the best corner on the team, I feel like, throughout the preseason, but I still want Ringo out there. Like, yeah, you give your high draft picks the benefit of the doubt. You see through those investments. But this is different. McKee was one of your investments, and they both were, him and Pickett, around the same tier. Like, they were both set out to be the same thing. You brought them both to be the same thing, and McKee, in that battle, an even battle, has been the better guy. So, I don't know. Tanner McKee should be QB2, but he's not. Kenny Pickett is. Stock up to Tanner McKee. Stock up to, I just mentioned, Kelee Ringo. Another position battle where, in my opinion, the worst player or the better player might not end up being the starter. Kelee Ringo, to me, is the better option over Isaiah Rodgers. Now, have I been at practice to see Rodgers play and make plays? No. However, in the preseason, Ringo has been the best corner on the team. And he was great. He was the best corner in the spring. And it sounds like he's had a pretty strong camp as well. Like, he's always in the right position to make a play on the ball. And man, did you see that again against New England. Only allowed 1 completion on 4 targets for 12 yards, a 39.6 rating, 0 yards allowed after the catch, which is huge since he wasn't a great tackler last year. He looks like a much more physical player at the line of scrimmage. Like, his press coverage has been awesome to watch. That length, that body control, the speed, the positioning and technique. He looks so refined. And he looks, again, more willing to tackle. This is the Kelee Ringo that people thought last year was a potential day 1, early day 2 pick. Now, we know he fell to day 3 and the Eagles traded up, giving up a future 3rd-round pick for him. But there was a time during the 2023 pre-draft process where we thought Ringo was a 1st or 2nd-round talent. And you're seeing that kind of potential on the field. And he gets a couple shots deep every single game where the quarterback tests him, and he has passed with flying colors. Again, Isaiah Rodgers, I'm sure it sounds like he's having a really good camp, and you love that, sub 4.3 speed. But in the scenario where Quinyon Mitchell is not the starting boundary corner, which I don't think he will be, I want him to be. But if it's got to be Ringo versus Rodgers, Ringo would be my pick. Kelee Ringo has been maybe the best player in the preseason for the Eagles, or at least I would say top 3. So stock up to Kelee as well. Stock up to another defensive back, Avonte Maddox. I'm surprised how good he's looked at safety. Like, I know he's played this position in the past. Last year in the playoff game against Tampa, 2018, when there was a ton of injuries, he filled in at safety for, I believe it was Rodney McLeod, right? Yeah, he played next to Malcolm Jenkins for a little bit. Avonte Maddox looks really good at safety. He's the main reason for 2 goal line stands in back-to-back games, including that interception yesterday in the end zone. You just see how intelligent he's been. Like, the IQ, it really feels like he has this Vic Fangio defense down to a science where he's pointing players like, you need to go here. Like, here's like pre-snap. He's kind of directing the defense. And that's really impressive for a guy that maybe some people didn't think should be on the roster. I know Geno didn't for a little bit, but I'm not surprised he's playing well. Avonte Maddox, the question has never been about can he ball. The question has been about can he be on the football field. And so he looks like the Avonte Maddox of 2022. Like, he looks really good, and it's impressive because it's at a new position in a brand new defense. Of course, though, injuries are the key question. Can he last? But I think he's in a better role where he can stay healthy throughout the year as your like third or fourth safety. I've wanted Sidney Brown to be that third safety, maybe even second over Reed Blankenship this year when he comes back from his injury. But I do wonder when Sid comes back, is he going to be the third safety or is it going to be Avonte? Like, Avonte looks that good. And again, it's a great problem to have when you have this many options in the secondary. But I think Maddox has earned playing time this year. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to continue with the positives. Coming up next, stock up. We'll wrap things up with stock down in segment 3. Don't go anywhere. This is the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, but not just the MLB, the NFL as well. I bought my Eagles Saints tickets in New Orleans through Game Time. You can buy tickets for concerts. I'm going to see Avril Lavigne on Tuesday. Let's go. Comedy, theater, all that and more. You can save up to 60% buying last-minute tickets through Game Time. Plus, on top of the great prices, you're also going to get a great view. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, NFL, concerts, you name it and more through Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, make sure your second listen is the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. I got my draft next weekend, so I've been cranking through Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Stock up, stock down continues after an Eagles 1-point win over the Patriots Thursday night, week 2 of the preseason. I love the preseason. Honestly, like, I love watching the second and third team. I'm a sicko in that way, but I'm definitely ready after 2 of these games for some real regular season football. By the way, stock up real quick to the veterans that weren't playing. Stock up to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, even like I saw Paris Campbell out there. When backups were making good plays on the field, like you saw them engaged in the game. Like Joseph Nagata, before he got that injury. Great game for Joseph Nagata, is it? I always mispronounce his name, but 88 yards on 5 receptions. And yeah, he was being wrapped up for the first down marker, and he pushed and he kept fighting off the tackle, reached out to move the sticks. And you saw A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Paris Campbell all come out, like cheer him on. That's awesome. Like, it's great to see like the first teamers that aren't playing engaged in the preseason. It shows a lot of leadership, and those guys are stepping up as leaders this year. Like A.J. and Devontae, underrated leaders that I think have stepped up since, you lost a bunch of leaders like Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey. So definitely stock up to the vets. Even when Avonte Maddox got that pick, like A.J. Brown especially is all over the sidelines, like very engaged in that. And A.J. Brown has been, again, all the stupid narratives about him last year when it comes to like being a problem in the locker room and not being a leader or mature veteran. It was all hoopla. Like, I think he's proving that this offseason for sure. Stock up as well to Bryce Huff. Liked seeing him finally make some splash plays. And the best part was it was against the run. Because we all know the big question with Bryce, he's an elite pass rusher, like a situational pass rusher. He's been one of the most efficient players statistically getting to the quarterback over the last 2 years. He's been top 5 in almost every category. But with the Jets, he was a rotational, more so a third down player because he hasn't been able to be great against the run. He hasn't been able to be a 3-down player. The Eagles paid him almost $17 million a year to be an every down player. Now, of course, you drafted, or I should say signed him to get after the quarterback, but to justify that contract, it's not like it's $25 million a year, but 17 is not just for a situational rotational player, or else you would have paid somebody else. Bryce Huff's supposed to be a full-time player. He made multiple nice plays against the run in New England. Now, he was out of position a few times, but it was the flash that you wanted to see. Like, you can see that it's there. And especially after Vic Fangio I don't want to say he called him out at a press conference a few weeks ago, because that's what Vic does with pretty much everybody. But he did say, as of right now, and that was a few weeks ago, Bryce is not there yet when it comes to being an every down player. But there were a couple times where he set the edge really nicely yesterday, got physical, shed the tackle, and made the tackle. So I thought Bryce Huff looked really good, and he did make some big plays in the joint practice against New England, getting to the quarterback. So Huff has been kind of quiet this offseason, and it's good to see he's making some splash plays. Now, of course, that might not be on him. He does have to go up against Lane Johnson every single day of practice. So Lane Johnson's one of the greatest tackles of all time. So it's probably that more so than Huff's not having a good summer. But I will say that was a nice boost of confidence and just a little reassurance that, okay, yeah, he can be that guy, because he needs to be that guy for the Eagles this year. So I would say stock up to Bryce Huff, the veterans that didn't play yesterday. Then the linebackers, I thought, yet again, Nakobe Dean, he's really gaining some momentum here. He had a really good preseason game against Baltimore, got some first-team reps in the joint practice, broke up a play in the red zone, forcing an interception. Hasn't been great in coverage this summer, so it was good to hear that. And then you see him yet again yesterday, the pursuit, the tackling, the cleanups, the blitzing. He's showing why he was a stud at Georgia. He is such a good player coming downhill. And I will say Zack Baun looked pretty good too. Like, Zack Baun looks a lot more comfortable at middle linebacker, inside linebacker this week than he did last week, especially against Baltimore. But so Baun made a couple nice plays, but I will say Nakobe, there's some momentum there. Like, I do wonder if this is going to be linebacker by committee with Baun, Dean, maybe even Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who's had a great summer. And I didn't think it was his best game yesterday. He made a couple nice plays, but also missed a few tackles and then kind of looked lost a couple times in zone coverage. But I think Baun and Dean had a really nice night. And Nakobe, like, this is the Dean that they drafted. Like, this is who they believed in so much that they let TJ Edwards and Kazir White go. So Nakobe, if he can stay healthy, he's going to play. I don't know if he's going to start with Devin White right away, but he's going to rotate through. It's not going to just be Devin White and Zack Baun. Like, Nakobe Dean's going to play, and maybe he will be the first starter, and Zack Baun is the rotational guy. If Nakobe keeps having these kind of good days stacked on top of each other, he's got one more preseason game to really try to jump Zach. We'll see I'm very curious to see when they return to practice this weekend, what the split is between Baun and Dean. I think Trotter is still that fourth guy in the rotation. I think sooner rather than later, he's going to be a starter for this football team. But right now, Dean and Baun, they look good. It's, again, another good problem to have where I think you have four linebackers that are playing pretty solid football right now. And I don't think that was the expectation coming in. I don't think the expectation was there for Baun or even Trotter to a degree. And Nakobe, we had a lot of question marks on. So it's great to see that they're all playing good football, now late into August. Two more stock ups. I'd say Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith continue to look good at that, overhang position. Jalix might be one of the steals for the Eagles this year of the draft in the third round. I think he's going to play a lot and early on. And then it was great to see Nolan Smith get another sack. Another weird Nolan Smith sack. It's always just from crazy motor and just he never lets the play die. He just never stops moving his feet, which is so important. He shed a double team, though, trying to get around on the edge, cut back inside, and sacked Jacoby Brissett. That was a really nice play. 2 sacks in 2 weeks. The Eagles need Nolan Smith to step up this year, and it was good to see him actually beat a tackle, unlike a tight end or kind of have a free rush at the quarterback or some trickery where they're using him in like through the A gap, like on a stunt or a blitz. It was nice to see him just beat a double team and get to the quarterback. So I would say stock up to Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith as well. All right, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, stock down who did not help their case for the roster, for a starting job, all that and more coming your way right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users, they don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're not looking in the right place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses, they get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're wrapping up this Friday edition of the show, recapping Eagles-Patriots, a 1-point win for the Birds. It's 2 preseason games down, 1 more to go. Let's get into stock down, though. A lot of positives from that game, but also, by the way, shout out to Patrick Johnson again, too, another stock up. Had a really nice pass rush win, got a QB hit. Patrick Johnson, I think he deserves to be on a roster, even if it's not in Philly. Players that did not help their case for whatever they're battling for. Tyler Steen, I kind of feel bad for the kid. He got hurt again, and Mekhi Becton did not play. It looks like he has the right guard spot just wrapped up. I do wonder what the original motivation was for drafting Steen. Like, was it to be a guard and they just learned this isn't it? Was it to be a potential swing tackle or a long-term Lane Johnson replacement? I don't know. Like, what was the plan? Because it feels like they never really wanted him to win this job to begin with. And I think that's kind of been the case throughout the offseason. I don't know. I like Tyler Steen. I think he's a good player. I think he's technically sound. I think he's a smart player. He is versatile. He can play inside. He can play outside on the offensive line. But I think the Eagles they don't like to settle with the offensive line. And I think they've realized that maybe they think he's a floor player, not a ceiling guy. And they know Mekhi Becton, maybe the floor is lower, but man, does he have elite length, size, power against the run, or for the run, I should say. Maybe that's the case. I think that's what it is. The Eagles just look for stars on the line all the time, and they don't want to settle. And maybe they think Steen is better off being that like 6th man off the bench for your offensive line. I don't know, but it just feels like they never wanted him to win the job, and it sucks. He's been battling through injury. I thought last week he was on one leg and played really well, put some good reps on tape. And then this week, again, I thought he was playing well and got injured, and Becton, he won the job. So I would say it's stock down for sure for Tyler Steen. Probably ends up being now your swing tackle. If Lane goes down, he's probably the first man off the bench, or same with Becton, or maybe he even plays left guard if Landon Dickerson gets hurt. Although Trevor Keegan, yet again, had a great game yesterday. Like, that might be another steal the Eagles had. I think the Eagles might have crushed this draft because Quinyon Mitchell looks great. I think Cooper DeJean's going to be a stud. Jalen Hunt looks really good early. Your day 3 picks like Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Trevor Keegan, even Dylan McMahon has flashed a little bit. I love it. I think the day 3 class looks great. Who did not look great yesterday? James Bradberry. Stock down to James Bradberry. I mean, woof. The tackling looked like last year. The coverage was awful. I think you got to cut him. I mean, you've got at safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Reed Blankenship, Avonte Maddox, Sidney Brown when he comes back. You just signed Caden Stern. You've got TJ McCollum. Not TJ McCollum. TJ McCollum. Looked really good. I think also Cooper DeJean can play safety at some point. These are all better options at safety. Tristan McCollum, excuse me. Tristan McCollum has actually had a pretty good preseason, and he's lengthy and he flies downhill. They're all better options at safety to me than Avonte. So I should say Bradberry. So I think they got to cut. They got to cut him at this point. I respect him. I love what he did for the Eagles in 2022, but I don't think he belongs on this roster. And then I'd say stock down to Eli Ricks, a guy that I've really liked over the last 2 years, but I just think all these young corners look really good, and he's just lost in the weeds. I think he's going to end up being a trade chip. If the Eagles end up trading for a receiver or tight end, I really do think Eli Ricks is that piece that would move, because I think a team, like, he has starting ability. I think he has starting upside. He's got a high ceiling. Like, he has a good repertoire of skills. I think a team could say, we can develop him into a player. It's just a numbers game at this point, and Eli is the 6th or 7th man in this rotation, or kind of in the pecking order. So I think stock down to Eli just because Ringo looks great, Quinyon looks good, Rodgers has looked good this summer, Avonte, Cooper DeJean is back, Sidney Brown eventually returns. There's a lot of DBs that are going to be on the field before Eli Ricks, in the slot, on the outside, wherever he played last year. So I like Eli Ricks a lot. As a UDFA, that was a nailing signing. Like, I think they nailed it. But yeah, overall, stock down to Eli Ricks. I think he's going to end up being on a different team before September. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Once again, go check out Locked On Fantasy Football. Make it your second listen of the day. Get ready for your draft so you can win a ring in 2024. Louis DiBiase signing off. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.